going to welcome John Granger, who is going to give us his paper about, who's the author?
Vladimir Nabokov.
Right, Nabokov. All right, welcome, John.
Hey, welcome back. Travis Prinzi is among us. Yeah, all right. Let me see, am I up here? Okay, it's great to be back at Chestnut Hill. I have been a keynote, I have been a panel leader, I have been a presenter, and I have been a podcaster. Today, I am a substitute teacher. I was called on Tuesday and asked to give a talk, and so we'll see what John can come up with in about 3 hours this morning with a PowerPoint slideshow. And they did that to me because I have this Gilderoy reputation, and they figure I can take the hit. Okay. If you want to talk to me more and embarrass me, I'm upstairs signing books and selling books. I'm selling all my books for like $10 so I can pay for my flight home. Katie McDaniel will be up there doing a thing for the MuggleNet podcast, Reading, Writing, and Rolling, which many of you are familiar with. And there's a thing going around with email. If you sign up for that, I'll do a drawing later today, and you can get a free online class with me, 7 weeks long. It costs $250. Give me your email address, and I'll pull a name later today, and maybe you'll win. All right. It better be a good one, though, or you won't find out that you won. All right. On to the talk. This is Lolita and Harry Potter is Vladimir Vladimirovich Nabokov, Rowling's single greatest influence. This is impossible to cover in 20 minutes, so I'm going to switch this to the 5 things I learned this year about Hogwarts in my first year of PhD studies, and we'll see how this works. All right. Really, it all comes down to one thing. I learned how important Nabokov and everything about him is to Harry Potter. I want to start off with something relatively easy. Anyway, let's just go with this, okay? The thing I knew already but had not explored was how much Rowling loves Nabokov, the author I really love. He exhausts my reservoir of superlatives. Okay, now he's always been listed among Rowling's favorites. Always it's Colette, Jane Austen's the big one, Colette, and then Nabokov. And yet no one has written about this, except for Michael Marr, and nobody read that book because it was in German. I read Warum Nabokov, Harry Potter gemerkt hätte, for those of you who want to hear that. Why Voldemort would have loved Harry Potter. Why Voldemort? Why Nabokov would have loved Harry Potter. So this last year, I read Lolita, Pale Fire, Invitation to Beheading, Panin, Lectures on Literature. And the most connection between Rowling and Nabokov is the connection in the names. Just a little bit about him. He's born in St. Petersburg. How many of you have never heard of Vladimir Nabokov? Okay, how many of you have never read Vladimir Nabokov? Okay, that's like I was last year. All right. He's born a Russian aristocrat in St. Petersburg, and then the Soviet Revolution happens, the Soviet Holocaust, and his family is chased out. He winds up at Cambridge University. He actually read and wrote English before he read and wrote Russian. He's actually a native speaker of Russian, French, and English. He gets a degree in English and comparative literature from Cambridge, goes to Germany. His father is shot there by a Russian fanatic, an anti-Semite, because his father was a famous defender of the Jews. Nabokov marries a Jew. Vladimir, the son, marries a Jew, and his brother is eventually imprisoned and dies in a Nazi concentration camp. You can't read Nabokov unless you know that Rowling's worst experience was coming back, and she didn't get the respect she thought she deserved for being on the dole. She writes about totalitarianism, doesn't quite have the power of Nabokov's experience. He runs away from the Nazis as they invade France and comes to the United States to organize Harvard's butterfly conduction, which is another story. All right, on to initials here. Okay, let's talk about Rowling's use of names that are found in Nabokov's Lolita and Pale Fire. You know Mrs. Norris, the throwaway reference to Jane Austen? How about these names that come out of just 2 of Nabokov's books, Lolita and Pale Fire? Dolores, that's Lolita's real name. Lupin, Sybil, Argus, Sirius, Rufus, Rubius, Luna, Fleur de Flyer, who happens to be just like a Vila. She has certain tendencies, and Grindelwald. Okay? All right. If you're reading Nabokov and you're a Harry Potter fan, you're doing I think I've heard that name before. Anyway, these are definite pointers to this. I'm going to start putting these things up here so you can look at them. Next thing is anagrams. Lolita features a character, an embedded critic named Vivian Darkbloom. When you see Vivian in a Nabokov novel, his initials are, his name is Vladimir Vladimirovich Nabokov, which would be VVN. So he has a character named Vivian Darkbloom, which is an anagram for Vladimir Nabokov. It's very much like Thomas Marvolo Riddle and I Am Lord Voldemort. This is an anagram. Oh, well. Let's talk about the alliterative stuff here. Just, do you think that she's got a thing with alliterative initials? Okay, but how about a few more? All right, I mean, do you think? Yeah, I think we have a thing with alliterative initials. How about those paired letters with character names, those interior consonant add-ups there? You know, Harry Potter being a notable one, but look at all the doubled consonants and vowels inside those things. Pretty much a characteristic of Rowling's writing, right? Ever seen that in any other writer? Maybe a few more. How about a few more internal resonances where we see repeated consonantal sounds inside the names? Now, if you took that list and compared it to the list of all characters in Harry Potter, you're not left with much, all right? And then you read this from the annotated Lolita. Double names, initials, and phonetic effects prevail throughout Lolita, whether the twinning is literal or alliterative or trickily alphabetical. The double consonants of the almost infinite succession of humorously alliterative place names and points of interest that Humbert visits are thus thematically consistent. Rowling's names are almost taken whole cloth from Vladimir Nabokov in his interior mirroring, which is something we're going to talk about here. This is actually only the most obvious and the least important of the Vladimir and Joanne links, but it does make the point. J.K. Rowling is not kidding when she says she loves Vladimir Nabokov. Okay, let's go to intertextuality. The second thing I learned in my first semesters of PhD thesis work was the importance of what literary geeks call intertextuality. In a nutshell, this is the conscious allusion to other texts within a book, the art of literary allusion. I ask you, I put this picture of this up here, so please read B. Groves' Literary Allusion in Harry Potter. And yeah, Harry Potter bookshelves for sale upstairs. All right. For explorations on this theme, unfortunately, neither of these books, which detail how creatively Rowling alludes to previous authors and stories in her work, discusses Nabokov, from whom she most likely learned her intertextual artistry. Whole books have been written about just the literary allusions for Nabokov's Lolita. In fact, books have been written about just his references to Shakespeare in that book. Okay, not to mention Edgar Allan Poe, Alice in Wonderland, Joyce's Ulysses, Byron, and to Tristram Shandy, which probably sounds a lot like showing off or a snobbish way of hat-tipping writers who influenced your work. And maybe that is true of lesser writers. But in Rowling and Nabokov, intertextuality that is offered with outright reference is simultaneously a pointer to the original work for you to consider as a reference for comparison and reflection, and two, an invitation for you to consider the author's adaptation and the usage of the original. Rowling Nabokov claimed to be above influence. Rowling has largely said the same thing. I don't think of influence that way. She says repeatedly when people say, oh, didn't you take this from so-and-so? Rowling is an active writer that engages works consciously and then subverts that work. And this is probably the most important thing I've learned in the past year, is that Rowling, to get this, it helps to know that Vladimir Vladimirovich was a world-famous lepidopterist. He's an expert on butterflies. He often said, if not for the Soviet Holocaust, he almost certainly would have spent his life studying these insects. His first job in the US, as I said, was sorting Harvard's butterfly collection. Every summer he spent touring the world in search of rare butterflies. So what? Butterflies are famous natural mimics, what we would call experts in camouflage. Nabokov considered himself and his work a like expert, a mimic or parodist of other works of art. Now, this is an explosive idea because all of you have been hearing things about Rowling is writing children's literature, Rowling is writing schoolboy novels, Rowling is writing alchemical drama. I want to suggest to you that no, she is not. She is writing a parody of those genres and inverting them, subverting them, and bringing them to something higher. All right? This is intentional artistry of the highest order. This is Nabokov. All right? Again, Nabokov said he is above influence, that he didn't imitate other writers unconsciously, but that he was aware of the qualities of writers he admired or despised and consciously adapted them to his own ends. He famously said that satire is a lesson, parody is a game, and he was a great gamesman and puzzler. He actually worked in Germany after his graduation from Cambridge as a crossword puzzle maker and a chess problem writer for newspapers, okay? And in his work, which are notoriously involved games that are often still the subject of academic dispute about things as seemingly straightforward as who is telling the story. When you read Pale Fire and you haven't read it 4 times, you don't know what's going on. You're totally engaged by the story, but when you finish, you say, now, wait a minute. Could that? Yes. Yeah, that's probably what you got. Anyway, Pale Fire, perhaps Nabokov's greatest work, is a parody of Robert Frost's poetry, academic annotation of literature, and adventure novels for boys, not to mention undependable narrator stories. But here is the important thing. Nabokov's parodies are funny and instructive, but they are also subversions, reinventions, and better than the originals in delivering what they do. I put Robert Frost up there because the poem, the 1,000-line poem, actually 999 lines, that he writes at the beginning of Pale Fire is the best Robert Frost poem not written by Robert Frost. It's, in fact, many ways better than Robert Frost, which may be the single important thing I learned this year or the past 10 years about JKR is she is not writing schoolboy fiction, alchemical drama, gothic romance, and children's literature, not to mention Christian fantasy, but parodies of these genres, which she subverts, a word she used when she was talking to Lev Grossman in 2005. I was subverting the genre. She reinvents them to deliver a more powerful experience of what the original genre meant to offer. If I had more time, I'd talk to you about the positive horror of Gothic, and there's an expert on Gothic sitting in that back table, and the schoolboy empire and postmodern values that she turns upside down. Rowling is a subversive parody writer. Yeah, we've just talked about all those things. Bye, Joanne. All right. Intratextuality. Butterflies have another characteristic, right? Each wing is a mirror reflection of its left-right opposite complement. Nabokov's work is not only a set of intertextual masterpieces, novels in which the serious reader gets an education about books and writers who have come before and how Nabokov thinks they are best understood and adapted, but they are intratextual works in which he talks about, reflects upon his own work inside that work. This would have to be a 90-minute talk to talk about how Vladimir writes mirroring texts, but here are some pictures of the structure of Lolita. Here's his famous comment, his Playboy magazine interview in '64. This is from a wonderful work, Structure in Lolita by Lisa Hamritt, in which lays out how, those of you who know ring composition are seeing how these things are that way. You have a latch of the forward and the second, the thing. Oh, well, I hope you see that. Because I'm not going to detail it here. But it gets actually more complicated than that. When I laid it out, the book has 2 parts, part 1 and part 2 you see at the top, and his own division. And so it goes chapter 1 to 33, and then it has another set of chapters coming back. And chapter 1 and 3 match chapter 3 on the other side, and you can see how that works coming across. All of those things echoing that way. If you lay it out so the 2 parts are done the same way, they look just like that. All right? This is intense mirroring. In fact, in the central chapter, he's in the hotel room where he deflowers. He doesn't actually deflower her. She's fairly experienced sexually. But where he has his first sexual meeting with Lolita, the entire thing is in a bedroom, which everything in the bedroom is mirrored. And he talks about it again and again and again as a mirror, as we're beginning the mirrored image now. If you don't get that, you don't think that's important, then you need to understand that every single Harry Potter book and the series is a complex ring composition. 197 chapters and an epilogue in which every single chapter has its complement across the axis of the story. And there's a book upstairs for sale for $10 if you want to get all the details on that. All right. Just to run you through this, I mean, it's every single one of the Harry Potter novels has these in and outs back and forth. And Ms. Camachi will tell you that that is at 5 more minutes, so you ain't getting any of that conversation here today. We're just going to run right through this. You know, Lin-Manuel Miranda in a Twitter thing called her the maestro of reprise because of that, the book before, the one before that, Half-Blood Prince and the You Are With Me and I Am With You, that musically, it works again and again and again, all right? That's really the genius, the OCD madness of Harry Potter. And if you want to, this is definitely going to be the flash version of the organization of how the books interrelate with one another. And there you go. Okay, the asterisks. Again, you can read about that upstairs. I think I've covered all this. Yes, we did. Okay. Now I can relax. All right. Yeah, there's the book you want to buy upstairs. All right. Rowling's parallelism is everywhere. It's not only in the rings and the circles inside the books, it's in the embedded text. Is Caitlin Harper here by any chance? All right, she's here probably giving her talk somewhere. She speaks about Quidditch as a rule and how each text, first of all, there's Emily Strand there standing up who revealed how the Quidditch is a symbol set and reveals the larger meaning of the series. But not only is every Quidditch match that symbol set, every Quidditch match Caitlin Harper revealed is a picture of the entire story of that novel. That if you follow the Quidditch, she's embedded a mirrored image of the story of that book. All right? I mean, this is, then there's the fact that she's writing a Cormoran Strike series in which the books that she's writing are commentaries on the Harry Potter books that are their parallels. If you read Cuckoo's Calling, it's about Philosopher's Stone. You read The Silkworm, it's about Chamber of Secrets. I mean, this is a woman that is engaged with her own work and its commentary. All right? Rowling is writing about reading, about what a text does and how it rewards rereading. It's all set up to be defamiliarizing, all right, so that you're constantly struck by its literariness, hence those echoing inside and all that alliteration. You're supposed to look at that alliteration and say, oh, isn't that literary? And it lifts you out of the text to make you think about the text as a text you're reading. And you think about the text inside the text that you're reading as something the characters are doing that you're supposed to model because you're reading that book. Really, the Cormoran Strike novel, The Silkworm, in which the mystery turns on a book called Bombyx Mori, which means silkworm. Everybody's trying to figure out what the silkworm means while you're reading a book called The Silkworm and trying to figure out what it means. This is metafiction on steroids, right? All right. This is all about, I don't like schools of criticism. I don't like feminist theory. I don't like Marxist theory. Let's talk about the book, okay? And then I found out there's a school of criticism that does just that. Oh no, I'm one of those guys. And of course, it had to be the school where I went to school. That would probably make sense, right? 2 minutes. That's Sklavoski. You're not going to hear about that guy. All right. Nabokov is entirely about structure and planning. He says, don't give me themes, don't give me ideas, give me structure. Give me form. That's what the meaning is in the work. Last thing, otherworldliness. That's Vera Nabokov there. And she said when he died that potostoronost, which means otherworldliness, was the main theme of Nabokov's work and saturates everything that he wrote, but it does not seem to have been noticed by anyone. All right, that's Lev Grossman's instructor at Yale, incidentally. That idea is exactly what you get in things like those we love never really leave us. And the ghosts that haunt things, the presence of the dead. She takes that straight from Nabokov in stories like The Vane Sisters, and Rowling actually names a character after one of the Vane sisters inside her works. All right, what 5 things did I learn this year? I'm coming right down to it. She says, okay, to understand Rowling, you need to understand Vladimir Nabokov. Have I succeeded in getting you there? Okay, you got that. All right. Rowling is an intertextual master and primarily a writer of parody. That's going to be the new wave of Rowling criticism, is getting Rowling as a writer of parody. The key to Rowling's ring writing and parallelism is intratextuality, this mirroring that we get from butterflies. Rowling's otherworldliness is built on the Nabokovian model. And most importantly, the critical adventure of Potter Studies has only just begun.